Estamos en vivo.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jorge Islas, the Consul General of Mexico in New York. I'm very pleased to welcome all of you to this webinar, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the new USMCA Free Trade Agreement. This seminar is part of a series organized by the Ministry of Economy and the Foreign Affairs Ministry as well, of the federal government of Mexico, the Embassy of Mexico in Washington, and of course, the Consulate General of Mexico in New York. The webinars just start, of course, New York is on the top of the list, not only because of the banking and the financial sectors, but because of many others in the region that are deeply integrated with Mexico, such as the machinery in New York, auto parts and aerospace in Connecticut, and New Jersey's logistics platforms. This is a very peculiar time. We're living a pandemic, as we know, that has been affecting virtually every single nation in the world. This pandemic has led the international organizations such as the IMF to brutally slash the GDP forecast for 2020 for almost every single nation, to say that recovery will take place slower than initially expected. At the same time, we are 6 days away from the entry into force of the new trade agreement, the USMCA, between Mexico, the US, and Canada. The USMCA modernized the previous one, the NAFTA, and is adapting new areas, new disciplines to the new needs of 20th century's economies. This drives the strength of the North American competitiveness and guarantees certainty in trade and investments. The USMCA is the first trade agreement worldwide that incorporates elements and address the social impact of international trade. And it's very important because it's integrating new sectors that are very important for our countries in order to improve the lives of the people, such as anti-corruption fight, such as protection for the environment, among others. That is why the entry into force of this USMCA comes like a breath of fresh air. I'm certain it will be an instrument that will allow us, the three countries, to navigate the current economic challenges as partners for the coming years. The purpose of this webinar is to showcase the new opportunities that the USMCA is offering and brings for the companies in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut as well, when they are trying to do business in Mexico. For this, we are honored to have today the distinguished participation of our guest, our keynote speaker, Vice Minister of Foreign Trade of the Ministry of Economy, Luz Maria de la Mora. Vice Minister de la Mora has been head of the Unit of Economic Relations and International Cooperation in Mexico Ministry of Foreign Affairs and head of the International Trade Negotiations Unit in Mexico's Ministry of Economy, as well as head of the representations of Mexico's Economy Ministry before the European Union in Brussels and before ALADI in Montevideo. She served as economic counselor at the Embassy of Mexico in Washington, D.C., and was part of the NAFTA negotiation team. In the academic field, she has been a visiting researcher at the Woodrow Wilson Center and at the Center of the U.S.-Mexico Studies University in California in San Diego. She holds a bachelor's degree in international relations from Colegio de México, a master's in international political economy from Carleton University in Canada, and a PhD in political science at Yale University. Doctora de la Mora, it's a pleasure to hosting you, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Oops. Good morning. Thank you so much, Jorge. Thank you for hosting us today. It is a great honor and a great privilege to be able to share this conversation with the private sector and all of the stakeholders in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We very much appreciate the opportunity of being close to all of you through this video system, the video conference, taking advantage of technology and taking advantage of all of the available means of communications through internet and telecommunications. So it is a great opportunity for me today, and I appreciate very much the possibility of sharing some insight of how we see what are we doing in Mexico to get ready for USMCA implementation next week, July 1st, and also what are the opportunities that we see to strengthen further our relationship, our economic productive relationship between Mexico and the states of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So if you will allow me, Jorge, I'm going to share my screen so that I can share with you a presentation. And please let me know if this is, if you can see it correctly, and also if you can hear me correctly. So now
Yes.
we can. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, where we are today, we have a history of integration that has been in place for more than 25 years as a result of NAFTA. So when we talk about USMCA and when we talk about USMCA coming into place on July 1st and replacing NAFTA, what we're looking into is a continuity with respect to what we have already accomplished, some changes and modernization with respect to NAFTA, going and seeing into the future, and also some important additions to the rulebook that we have for North America in terms of trade and in terms of investment. In this graph that you see here, what we're showing is the contents of USMCA. The boxes in red are those disciplines that come from NAFTA and that were modernized, adjusted, or changed in order to reflect the changes, not only in the nature of the integration that we have already been able to build, but also with respect to the changes, the dramatic changes that the economy has faced in the last few years, and seeing ahead for the economy of the 21st century, an economy that shows great component with respect to technology, Internet of Things, the Industrial Revolution 4.0, artificial intelligence, fintechs, and all of the areas that comprise the digital economy of the 21st century. Those areas that you see colored in green are those that did not belong to NAFTA and were integrated into the agreement to try to build a more comprehensive agreement that has commitments and that integrates areas that in one way or another are affected or could be benefited from trade and investment flows in the region. So these are basically 10 new areas that we have that were not included in NAFTA and that are now part of USMCA. But I think that one of the most relevant aspects of all this has to do with the fact that this rulebook of integration in North America offers certainty. And I think that that is the key word for USMCA, taking the place or replacing NAFTA. NAFTA also offered this set of rules that offered certainty, transparency, and also a predictable set of rules for the stakeholders and for all those economic operators doing business in North America. USMCA also maintains free trade. It allows the three countries to keep a free flow of trade in goods and services in the region and preserves North American integration. The idea is that North America as a region continues to be an attractive region to investment, continues to remain competitive, and also that we can together continue to produce together. I think that that's one of the highlights of NAFTA, and that's one of the things that we should always remember about NAFTA. It is that the three of us not only trade together, but we also produce together, not only for the region, but also for the world, for the markets in the world. If we were to summarize the contents of the agreement in 4 specific areas, I would say that we could put USMCA in 4 different categories, and those are looking ahead into the years to come for USMCA. The first one has to do with those disciplines that will allow us or that will help us to maintain regional competitiveness. Regional competitiveness in terms of the production of goods, services in our region, but also vis-a-vis the rest of the world. And in this respect, the disciplines that will help the 3 countries and companies in the 3 countries remain competitive have to do with preferential access that we are taking from NAFTA. We're showing continuity with respect to the fact that we will not impose tariffs among ourselves, and when we impose them for any reason, there are ways either to compensate, try to come back to free trade. Regulatory coherence is also a very important area because regulations today can be the means to open or close markets. And in this respect, we have worked very closely with the US and Canada to make sure that regulations are done on a transparent basis, that the process of doing regulations is a inclusive one that allows consultations to take place, and also where we can accomplish a regulation that is a state-of-the-art regulation with the best practices. And that is really important because that will allow business to reduce the cost of doing business in North America. The region also remains open to investment among ourselves. We consolidate the opening that we had already established in NAFTA. And we establish also the possibility of having or continuing to have an open North America for professional services. This is not minor, since we know that in this economy of the 21st century, also being able to transfer personnel and to offer professional services across borders is also essential to keeping our competitiveness. And in addition to that, 2 areas that are of the most importance have to do with SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and technical barriers to trade, where we're basing our SPS measures on science, not on precaution, as Europe does. And TPT, we're also ensuring that we will have the best regulation available to serve both purposes. The purpose of reducing costs, but at the same time ensuring that regulations help the 3 countries to address the real issues really regarding health, safety, and all of the issues that have to do with TBT. A second area in which USMCA has offers new possibilities for North America has to do with an inclusive and responsible trade, which is one of the areas that we believe had to be updated. The rule book for North America needed to show that we can really benefit all of the sectors in society that are impacted by trade in one way or another. We know that the benefits of trade are multiple, that they reach different sectors in different ways. Sometimes they're more visible than others, sometimes they're more evident than others, but we also know that there are some sectors that have some impact that may result in probably relocation of jobs and the like. So the reason why we included these chapters and why we think that this will provide more benefits to the region is because we have integrated SME and SME chapter. You know that SMEs are the majority of the productive network, at least in Mexico. But in the Mexican case, only 5% of SMEs account for total exports in Mexico. So we know that there is room for more participation in SMEs and more opportunities. We have also included gender issues, knowing that there is a gap. There's a gender gap between those companies that are led by men and those that are led by women. And we want more equity. We want more participation of women-owned businesses in North America, because we know that that will boost also the region's competitiveness. Labor rights and environment were incorporated in this agreement in such a way that Mexico and our partners will have to observe our own domestic legislation. This will be a new way of connecting trade and environment and trade and labor. We believe that if we're able to show that we are capable of complying with our own domestic legislation, we will be in a situation in which we will have smooth trade and smooth investment in the region. We have taken these two issues very seriously. We have worked very seriously with both the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Environment in Mexico to make sure that we're ready to implement these provisions starting July 1st. And anti-corruption is also a very important chapter in this agreement. And the reason is that we believe in this government that fighting corruption is the best way to create the best business environment. So we are strengthening the national anti-corruption system, and we're encouraging companies in Mexico to have compliance programs so that they can make sure that anti-corruption practices are in place, not only at the government level, but also at the private sector level. The third area of interest for us has to do with certainty in trade and investments. The kind of dispute settlement mechanisms that are incorporated into USMCA will certainly give a very strong implementation to USMCA. To the extent that any of the three countries decide to impose measures that could run counter to the provisions that we have in USMCA, we have dispute settlement mechanisms under Chapter 31, state-to-state dispute settlement mechanisms. We also have the investor state that replaces Chapter 11. Now this is Chapter 14, where we have Section B. We have an arbitration dispute settlement mechanism where any dispute between Mexico and the US in terms of telecommunications, energy, transportation, or infrastructure can be solved through this dispute settlement mechanism. And we also have trade remedy laws, which is Chapter 19, that now has become Chapter 10, that also builds a very strong way for companies to ask for a revision or a review of any decision made by the investigating authority. So these pillars for dispute settlement mechanisms, it's not that we want to use them or we don't want to trigger them, but this does give the certainty to companies, investors, exporters, and the like, that what is written in USMCA will have to be observed by the three countries. And if for some reason this doesn't happen, we have the way to to revising those decisions and also to having binding decisions at the end of the day. And the last part, in which I think it's a contribution of USMCA to the region, has to do with the economy of the 21st century. We have a very robust intellectual property chapter. We know that intellectual property is the basis for the development of innovations, for the development of the 21st century economy that is based on research and development, patent protection, and the like. So it's a very robust chapter that we know will help to attract investment in those sectors that will help North America remain competitive. The chapter on digital trade is new for North America, and we know that this is going to also help boost not only trade in internet, but also e-commerce. And financial services is also a sector in which we know that provisions will help, hopefully, to develop sectors like fintech. You know that Mexico is the #1 leader in this sector in Latin America, and we hope that we will be able to build on this. So this is the group of legislation, or the group of rules, I should say, that will come into effect on July 1st. And it is an update of NAFTA, but it is also a modernization of NAFTA in coming into the next, into the future. Now, where are we coming from? What has NAFTA accomplished? And I think that this is very important to be clear about how USMCA is coming into effect. What is the context in which we are facing USMCA? And let me tell you that I think that we're coming from a success story. NAFTA created a competitive North American region. Today, we are a market that is close to 500 million people with a GDP that together, the three of us represent the second largest economy in the world with a GDP of $26 trillion. We are the first recipient of FDI in the world, the three together, getting to around 23% of FDI coming into markets in 2018. The three of us together represent the second global exporter worldwide, and we account almost for 16% of global trade in 2019. And among the three of us, intra-trade has reached $1.2 trillion. For Mexico, NAFTA has been a boost for its international trade. As you can see in this graph, from 1993 to 2019, there has been an average annual growth of 7.5% of our trade with both the US and with Canada. You can see here how also our trade with North America has been pushing also trade economic activity in Mexico. So it is not only that we are trading more, but this trade has also helped us to increase or to become an engine. This trade has become an engine for GDP growth. So I also want to let you know that before NAFTA, Mexico and Canada barely knew each other. We had a very distant relationship and our trade was basically non-existent. So NAFTA also helped create a trade relationship and a production relationship that did not exist, not only with the US, but also with Canada. So we're seeing a stronger North America because the three of us together are able to produce in a more effective and efficient way. Today, as a result of NAFTA, and we are starting USMCA with Mexico as the US top trading partner. In 2019, Mexico and the US traded close to $615 billion in goods, surpassing Canada and China. We have become the US most important trading partner. And also with respect to agriculture, in 2019, Mexico was also the US top trading partner. And agriculture has reached almost $48 billion. And we have to bear in mind that at the beginning of NAFTA in 1994, many in Mexico were very anxious and had a lot of misgivings about the fact of about the opening of the agricultural sector for Mexico. So we can see that agriculture and the agricultural sector has also been a winner. And the complementarity that we have between our two countries should be taken well care of, because we know that our offers, our supply, the products that we export to the US complement the US demand, and they go to the table of many American families and the like in Mexico. We also benefit from imports that we make from the US in terms of dairy products, grains, and all sorts of poultry, agricultural products. And also today, when we will put USMCA in place, this trade relationship is also a success story for almost half of the US, or more of half of US states. As you can see in this graph, US exports to Mexico are also key to many US states throughout the United States. In this map, you can see that Mexico is the largest export market for 7 US states, those that are along the border, as well as Nebraska and Kansas. For 19 US states, Mexico is the second largest export market, whereas 3 US states have Mexico as the third largest export market. So we are talking about 29 states in the United States, where you see that Mexico is an important export market. And I want to bring to your attention New Jersey, which in this map shows that for New Jersey, Mexico is the second largest export market. And that talks not only about the fact that NAFTA has been a success for the US, but this success has spread throughout many states, and it shows also the kind of integration that we have been able to build in North America and between Mexico and the US. Now, this productive integration is not only a result of trade flows in goods and services and the liberalization that we have experienced in the last more than 25 years. It is also the result of the free flows for foreign investment under NAFTA and into Mexico. NAFTA allowed investment in Mexico from the US and from Canada to build also a manufacturing sector, services sector that today is really a very sophisticated sector that boasts both an advanced manufacturing and an advanced service sector. So in this graph, what you can see is that investment from Canada and the US accounts for almost half of all foreign investment that Mexico has received between 1999 and March 2020. This investment has complemented production in North America and has allowed Mexico, the US, and Canada to build those global value chains. Today, we talk about global supply chains in a variety of sectors throughout the world. And I can tell you that we are starting this USMCA, this new USMCA, with an already strong supply chain in North America. Mexico is part of this equation, as you can see from this graph, where sectors like the automotive sector, auto parts, vehicle production, electronics, electrical equipment, and a variety of products in the electric and electronic sector are produced together. We produce together as a result of investments, as a result of trade liberalization, as a result of the production, manufacturing capacity that Mexico has developed. And today, I can tell you that any company that considers operations in North America or even in the US will consider Mexico as an essential component of its production. Why? Because Mexico brings a competitive edge to production in North America. So USMCA will take place, will start in a better situation than NAFTA, in the sense that supply chains are already there. They are already established. Mexico has proven that it can be a reliable partner, and that with Mexico, the US and Canada can produce better together in a more competitive way, in a more efficient way. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the story behind Mexico, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut trade and investment opportunities. As I showed you before, many states in the United States have largely benefited from NAFTA and from trading with Mexico. In the specific case of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, what you can see in this table is that not only exports and imports from Mexico account for a good amount of total exports from the world in these three states, but also jobs. Jobs are a key measure of success of this integration. And you can see that there are thousands and thousands of jobs in New York, in New Jersey, and in Connecticut that depend on trading with Mexico under NAFTA, and hopefully more jobs will be created and supported as a result of USMCA. Let me show you some information. Let me offer you some information with respect to imports from Mexico that New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are already doing from Mexico. And as you can see in these three tables that I'm showing you here, there is some similarity with the pattern that we already have with respect to trade in global supply chains and in areas that have to do with shared production, like, for example, the electronic sector, the electrical sector, machinery, equipment. But I think that can also bring to the table the fact that we're also exporting products in the mining sector. For example, in the case of Connecticut, imports in the silver, zinc, copper, gold sector shows also the kind of supply chain that we have developed in the mining sector. And these metals are used for a variety of industries in the US, including jewelry, for example. And then we have a variety of products that really show that this trade is a trade that is very consistent with the kind of trade that we have been able to grow as a result of strong supply chains in these sectors in North America. I also want to show you how exports from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut account for exports, their total exports to Mexico account for some growth in the three areas. And in the case of New York, Newark, Jersey City, exports growth since 2005 are 65%. Philadelphia, Camden, Wilmington, 138%. Bridgeport, Stamford, Norwalk, 171%. And Hartford, it's the only one that shows a decline. So I think that what we want to bring to your attention in this case is that metropolitan areas in these three states have an important participation in terms of their exports to Mexico. So we are really having this kind of exchange, but I know also that we could have even more. No, the growth is already there for USMCA to take advantage of opportunities. And I want to also to mention right now just a few opportunities, which are only some ideas to highlight where USMCA can take the region to. We know that one of the priorities of the Trump administration had to do with the auto sector. President Trump said since the very beginning of the renegotiation that he wanted to see more companies in the auto sector moving back to the US, manufacturing moving back to the US, and also more jobs. That is one of the reasons why we see a more restrictive regime of origin for the auto sector. However, even though this will mean that companies will need to face stricter rules of origin, it also opens the possibility to supply more from the region. And that supply chain may become even stronger as it can help to maintain the competitiveness in North America. So, for example, there's a 70% rule of origin requirement for steel and aluminum in the region. So starting year 7, steel will have to be melted and poured in the region. That opens a window of opportunity for the steel sector to develop the kind of steel that the automotive industry will require. We know that the steel sector can offer new jobs to the region. So there's an opportunity there. There's also the opportunity to promote more local sourcing in a variety of areas, given that we are, for example, talking about the principal components, essential components, and complementary components. So these three components that will have to comply with the regional content that will have to be complied with. This opens for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers to establish in North America, to establish in Mexico, and to strengthen the supply chain in North America. As a result of COVID-19, we have seen the vulnerability of certain supply chains, and we have seen that there are companies that are rethinking how to build more resilient supply chain. CA, with its new requirements in the auto sector, may offer the opportunity for the auto industry in North America to become more resilient as they shorten their supply chains and also they decouple from third regions. With respect to opportunities in other areas, I want to just touch on one specific area, which has to do with the digital economy and e-commerce. The provisions that we have included in USMCA are provisions that create a regional regime for the free flow of data, for duty-free and tax-free digital environment where all digital products will face no taxes, for the flourish and the creation of new companies that are based on technology, on the internet. And also we are opening a new area of opportunity in e-commerce for SMEs. E-commerce is the first time that we have rules for providing trade facilitation and also more expedited processes and easier processes for of e-commerce, but also for companies that support e-commerce, those technological platforms, the couriers that are required to have for e-commerce to take place, and also digital payments. So it is a new set of opportunities that are coming along. We in Mexico are in the process of working on developing the new kind of rules, regulations, and laws that we will require to develop this digital economy and this e-commerce that we know will help boost competitiveness and also will help create new opportunities in the region. And I would like to finish this presentation by telling you why Mexico is a good partner and a good ally for Canada and the US as USMCA comes into play. And these are five very important business reasons to consider Mexico as a key ally and also consider Mexico in your business plans. Mexico ranks among the world's top emerging markets with a stable and open economy. We have a network of 13 free trade agreements with 50 countries in the world that offers preferential access to more than 1.3 billion consumers in economies that represent more than 60% of the world's GDP. We have a strong, innovative, and diversified industrial platform in a wide range of industries. Mexico is unique among emerging markets in the sense that we have a very strong manufacturing base that offers manufacturers that incorporate, integrate medium technology and advanced technology. We have state-of-the-art companies, state-of-the-art industries that are already developing their businesses with automation and in Industrial Revolution 4.0. Another very important factor for doing business in Mexico has to do with a human resource pool with young workers and a highly trained workforce. Our population averages 26 years old and a market close to 130 million potential consumers. We also have a high productivity and competitiveness combined that makes Mexico an open and ideal trading partner and an attractive place to invest. Mexico today is the second destination for investment in Latin America and the 15th among the world. And as a result of NAFTA, Mexico really changed its export platform. It changed the face of its manufacturing sector. Today, Mexico is the sixth largest producer of vehicles and the fourth exporter worldwide. We're the sixth largest supplier of aircraft parts to the US. We're the sixth largest exporter of information technology products and services. We're the seventh exporter, if excluded trade within the European Union. That is to say, the European Union is considered as one actor. We're the 13th largest recipient of FDI, and we're the 8th largest exporter of food products. These are just some highlights with respect to where Mexico is in the world. And my last comment would have to do with COVID-19. We know that USMCA will become effective in a very complex and a very challenging context. First of all, we are facing this pandemic that has forced us to close some activities, to close borders, to bring some restrictions that counter or run against integration and globalization. We understand these as temporary measures and as measures that are necessary in order to be able to address a health crisis. I think that it's important to bear in mind that we agreed to close the border for non-essential travel, but I think it's important to remind that this was agreed among the three countries. This is not something that was imposed unilaterally. It was something that we agreed to with the idea of addressing this pandemic. Second, USMCA really does not integrate any provisions that we could have predicted that it was going to happen. This situation of the pandemic is something that we never thought of, and this is not part of the rulebook of USMCA. What is in the rulebook of USMCA is the possibility of having dialogues among authorities, of coordinating with the private sector, and of creating the protocols and conditions that we need to meet in order to allow this smooth transition towards reopening a productive activity. We have seen that with COVID-19, there has been an increase in the use of digital services. We have seen a boost in terms of the e-commerce and information technology. We know that this has been, in Mexico at least, one of the ways in which we have been able to remain active and also for creation of jobs. So this is, COVID-19 is showing us another area of integration and opportunities for USMCA. We hope to be able to resume activities very shortly, to the extent that the pandemic is controlled. And we know that the implementation of USMCA on July 1st will offer certainty in a very uncertain business environment today. So on my part, this will be it. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and I'm ready for any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Madame Vice Minister de la Mora for her great presentation. Now it's the time for the session of the questions and answers, and it's going to be moderated by the head of the Trade Office of Mexico's Ministry of Economy in DC, Mr. Gerardo Lameda. Gerardo, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We received dozens of questions. Thank you for your interest and for sending your questions in advance. It helped us to better organize this session. Due to the time we have available, it is difficult to answer all of them. Nevertheless, we will send a written response to each of them by the same email that we received them. So if you have any further question, please contact us. Let's proceed with the first question we have. To Vice Minister de la Mora, how will COVID-19 affect trade, expectations, and rules between the US and Mexico? Thank you.
Well, not an easy question to answer. The COVID-19 pandemic took us all by surprise, and we were unprepared in terms of trade, in terms of production. So I want to say that even if we were not prepared, and even if we did not consider these kinds of events within USMCA, NAFTA, or any other bilateral agreement that we may have, I want to underscore the fact that Mexico and the US were able to have this permanent dialogue at the highest political level, but also with the private sector. And we agreed to take joint measures to guarantee trade flows through our borders. I think this was especially important to ensure access to food and essential products for the North American region. The agricultural trade was not impeded, and trade itself was not impeded. We did not create any kind of barriers, or we did not impose any restrictions to cross-border trade. Our governments also agreed to stop non-essential travel along the Mexico-US border and to allow business and agricultural workers to cross without any problem. So we were trying to be sensitive to this whole situation and also trying to maintain the essential economic activities because we understand the nature of integration. The COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on the economy, I think, have set new trends for international trade, such as the regionalization of trade, the relocation of supply chains, the reassessment of how we can maintain resilient global supply chains, and how far we can get into decoupling of global supply local. This is something that is on the make, but USMCA is the legal basis for those for the restructuring of those global value chains. The other thing is that we have also developed a strategic approach to reshore production of essentials such as medical equipment and personal protection equipment. So I would say that with USMCA and this renewed partnership, we have a place to talk to. We have some room for dialogue among public sector authorities responsible for integration, but also with the private sector. And I think that this dialogue is what will help us to shape this post-COVID-19 world. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister. We have another question. How does the current China-US relations will affect the commercial trade under the new USMCA?
Well, China is a very important actor in the world in terms of trade. It's for Mexico, China is our second largest trading partner, only after the United States. We know that since the beginning of the administration, there has been tensions between the US and China, and that has led to the imposition of tariffs on products. And it's had an impact in Mexico to the extent that Chinese exports to the US have reduced dramatically. Mexico has been able to take a share of that pie. So that had also made Mexico today the US largest trading partners. So what we have seen is that companies across all industries are rethinking relocating their supply chains from Asia back to North America. I am not implying to say that there will be a complete decoupling from the US with respect to China, but I think that Mexico could become a more important actor for some sectors, some segments of the value chain and some industries where it is very important or where it's key for these value chains to remain resilient. And this is a key, I would say this is a historic opportunity for Mexico and for America to build stronger and more competitive and more resilient value chains. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question says, what are the main challenges that the auto industry is facing regarding the new rules of origin?
Thank you. Certainly, I think that the auto sector was one that had the most important changes in terms of market access. And the reason I'm saying this is because today, or when USMCA becomes effective, we will not only have to comply with a regional value content of 62.5. For preferential access to take place, we will need to have companies that can comply with a whole set of rules that comprise the new origin regime for the auto sector. There's a regional value content that will have to get to 75% after 3 years. There's a labor value content that is something completely new that will have to be 40% in 3 years. There's also a 70% regional value content for aluminum and steel. And also there are these core parts that will also have to comply with the 75% rule of origin, in addition to the principal and complementary parts. So this becomes a very complex set of rules that were thought of, in my opinion, to make sure that preferential access in North America is reserved for companies that are investing in North America and are procuring from North America. So the challenge will be to be able to comply with this very complex set of rules, which are new, and the private sector will need to learn to live with them. But on the other hand, I think that it is important to bear in mind that this is the new normal, and we will have to live with it. In Mexico, we have been working with the industry, not only the OEMs, but also with the supply chain, to make sure that they have the capacity, the certifications, all of what they need in order to be able to be part of the supply chain. And one last comment I want to make is that USMCA also provides for the possibility of having something called the alternative staging regime. What this translates into is more flexibility for all of those original equipment manufacturers in automobile production, in light trucks or heavy trucks that need more time. If they cannot comply with this new regime in 3 years, they can have 2 more years or much time as may be needed, as long as they show that they have the intention of complying with this new regime. In Mexico, we are receiving applications before July 1st for this to take place. And we hope that this will allow companies to adjust to this new regime of origin. We know that it will not be easy, but this is what we have to work to. And I think that at the end of the day, the result may be stronger supply chain for the auto industry in North America with all of its spillover effects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have time for 2 additional questions. What is the new schedule to implement the rules of origin with the recent alternative transition regime?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my previous comment, I would say that today the transition regime that is implemented or that is provided in USMCA, it's a 3-year transition. What USMCA provides is if there's request for a longer time, it may be 5 years, or that is to say 3 plus 2 years, so that makes 5 years. But in case there are companies that require longer times, longer period of time to be able to comply with this new, we are open to considering new provisions as long as we understand why the company needs longer. No? So this is will be done on a case-by-case basis, and it will have to be agreed by the 3 countries, Mexico, the US, and Canada.
Yes, and our final question is the following. Are there new opportunities for companies offering digital services?
Oh yeah, without a question. I think that that's one of the most important areas and the innovations in USMCA. And I think that we are only in the beginning of the opportunities that the digital economy will bring to USMCA and to the integration of North America in a new way of doing business, which is the digital economy. And let me just talk about 3 provisions that will open business opportunities for digital trade in North America. The first one has to do with the ban on data localization. This ban will make it easier for companies in North America to provide their services across the region, regardless of the location of their servers, and that will reduce infrastructure costs and other related costs. So we don't have any requirement for data localization, data location. Second, I think has to do with what I mentioned during the presentation, which is that digital trade is duty-free and tax-free. So any operations that relate to cross-border trade in digital products such as software, music, games, entertainment, books, videos, whatever, that takes place in the digital space will face no taxes and no duties, no import duties. So that will certainly be a boost for digital trade to take place, and for companies also to participate in Mexico, the US, and Canada in this activity. So we believe that that is going to be a boost, and that will help also create more innovative projects in the region. And the third one has to do with protection against disclosure of software source, code, and algorithms to import, to distribute, sell, or use software. And that will give certainty to businesses and will promote innovation. So this liberalization of digital trade will help create opportunities for Mexican firms to be able to provide digital services and sell digital products to 500 million consumers in North America. So I think that this does create a new market where we did not have one. And I think we're going to see something very similar to what happened in the agricultural sector when NAFTA became effective in 1994. Many people were concerned about the future of agriculture. Many had some misgivings about the future of agriculture. I think that these provisions as they relate to the digital economy and digital trade will boost this sector, and we cannot imagine the kind of digital economy that three countries will be able to build as a result of provisions in USMCA. I can tell you that, and let's talk in 5-10 years and we'll see how this evolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister de la Mora. Before ending this event, I would like to let you know that starting on July 1st, the Ministry of Economía of Mexico will make available to all companies, businessmen, and businesswomen the USMCA Trade Assistance Center. This Export Assistance Center is a digital platform created to provide commercial, legal, and technical information about the USMCA, and also has a purpose to highlight the business opportunities and the trade benefits that the modernization of the agreement offers to the business community and to the small and medium-sized enterprises of North America. I would like to invite you to use the platform and be a frequent user of the USMCA Export Assistance Center. Thank you again, Vice Minister Luz María de la Mora. Thank you, General Consul Jorge Islas, for your presentation. We want to thank you all for your participation, and we hope this event has been productive and useful for you to take advantage of the USMCA and doing business with Mexico. And if you have any further questions, feel free to contact us. We're happy to assist you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, Jorge. Great seeing you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Thanks.
Bye.
Ciao.